Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Tax Defense Group, 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com, BEAT-IRS, fighting the modern-day Gestapo. We have with us Rachel Alexander. She's a columnist with thestream.org. She's written for a number of outlets, Town Hall, UK Guardian, number of very significant publications nationwide. She's a political analyst, prosecutor, former prosecutor, of course has her Juris Doctorate, and we've been putting her off. I've had her on now for 2 segments this show to talk about the presidential debate that is taking place. But first I want to do just a sideline, Rachel. You told me during the break that you just ran into Mitt Romney, and apparently he's helping out McCain. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were all disappointed in Arizona to see him come do a fundraiser for McCain a few days ago. As you know how the game is played, and Sarah Palin with McCain, I'm sure there was a lot of pressure put on him to do that because obviously us conservatives are supporting Kelly Ward. So anyways, I came back into town Saturday night after a conference in Texas with the Stream, and my husband works at the airport, and he saw Mitt Romney at the airport waiting to fly out. And so he went and talked to him and asked him about whether he was going to jump into the race later. And then I went up to Mitt Romney, and he's all by himself. Nobody recognized him. He's just in the regular gait and with glasses on, looking down. And so there was an empty seat next to him. I went up to him and said, I'm a conservative columnist, and I was just curious, are you going to jump into the primary later this year? And his response to me was, if the others agree.
Whoa. So what did you make of that?
Well, we think that he's either been threatened or warned, or the powers that be have told him you shouldn't. I also heard a day later from talking to inside sources that he may decide to jump in January.
So, I mean, you're going to write an article on this, aren't you? You got it.
I don't know. I mean, it was just one sentence, but
still, I mean, my word.
He said that. Well,
I mean,
he said that to me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the whole thing, though. I mean, so many Americans believe that the whole game is fixed. And of course, comments like that help support that whole theory that the elites pull the triggers and the levers, and that if you fall outside of it, good luck. But what's your take on Trump? I know we've talked about this before, but now, several weeks since our last discussion on Trump, do you think he's part of the establishment, or do you think he's out there just a narcissist trying to gain ego? He's really outside the fold.
My honest opinion is he can go both ways. If it suits him, he will be part of the establishment, which doesn't usually seem to be very often. But if he saw it to his advantage, I could see him going that way. For the most part, he is outside the establishment, and that's because he's so wealthy, he's so famous. He can mostly do what he wants. But, as for being anti-establishment, again, like you're just saying, I mean, half of it is all about, being funny, promoting himself, having a good time. Is that really the type of anti-establishment that we want? I mean, a lot of the stuff he says is like so outrageous. I've been saying this from day one. When he gets into if he wins the primary election and gets into the general, the media is going to crucify him over those remarks, because then it's him against the Democratic candidate, and the media all favors the Democrat. So that's where I get concerned.
So do you think that, getting back to the Romney thing and his statement that if the others agree, he may get in, he'd be the anti-Trump candidate in that context, right?
Yeah, he would. And he'd be like the grown-up, candidate. He'd be like the grown-up to Trump and Obama and, the tried and true tested. If you remember when the presidential candidates were first starting to line up and they were having a few polls with Mitt Romney still back then, he was beating everybody else, including Jeb Bush, way back then. So I think if he did jump back in, he'd be very formidable.
Do you think the political elites would be okay with Ted Cruz if he could take Trump out?
They would be, and here's why. In fundraising terms, he's raised second now to Jeb Bush when you look at the outside parties as well as his own team.
So you think that translates into, okay, if he can raise the money, he must be willing to temper his extreme positions in order to gain that kind of material support. Is that kind of the theory?
Well, I don't think he would necessarily. I mean, I think he's a little more principled than that. He wouldn't temper some of his positions, but I think at some point the establishment hates Trump so bad that they would settle for Ted Cruz over Trump.
Interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about what we can expect in this debate coming up. Tell us a little bit about the standard. I mean, who got to go where? I guess there's a major and a minors. How did that break down?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little different from the previous debates. Basically, if you were doing a little bit better in Iowa or New Hampshire, you were allowed into the race, the top tier. And so Rand Paul, it wasn't clear that he was going to actually make the top tier debate, but since he has 5% in Iowa, he made it in. So you've got the 9 candidates in the top tier, which are, front-runner Donald Trump at the center stage, flanked by Ben Carson and Ted Cruz. The other candidates will be Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Carly Fiorina, Chris Christie, John Kasich, and Rand Paul. The earlier second-tier debate is going to have Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, Lindsey Graham, and George Pataki. And if you notice, Huckabee, this is the second debate where he's now dropped into the second tier. Chris Christie, he had dropped into the second tier last debate. He's back up in the first tier now. So, a lot of this is going to center around, security issues. I mean, we've seen the attacks in Paris and the San Bernardino terrorist attacks. My prediction is, this is not going to be a good debate for Rand Paul.
So tell us a little bit about what to expect from the minors. I mean, obviously they got to break out, right, in order to join the fold again. Do you expect them to do or say or act in any way exceptional?
Yeah, and I should mention too, Bobby Jindal, to my dismay, I really liked him. He did drop out. He just could not break into that top tier. I think Lindsey Graham, as much as I dislike him, he's very good on foreign policy. So I think Lindsey Graham will do very well in the second tier debate. Huckabee always does fairly well. Santorum usually does somewhat well. Pataki, he's fairly good on foreign policy because of 9/11, but he generally sounds so liberal that I think it'll hurt him.
Right. All right, so let's turn to the main program, the majors, the 9 candidates that are there. Are they going to allocate more time to the top 2 or 3? I mean, is that kind of the process that's still going to be used?
I believe so, since it's CNN again, and that's what they did last time. So we're going to mostly hear from Donald Trump, Ben Carson, and Ted Cruz. Now, I do think we're going to hear a lot from Marco Rubio, mainly because, one, he considers himself the best of the group on foreign policy, and 2, he's been known to interject a lot and interrupt and get in, extra words. He's really good at that.
And, in fact, a lot of people believe that he's the only chance of the establishment to really get in one of their favored sons. What's going on with Jeb? I mean, is he reflecting, other than in fundraising, any type of strength?
Oh, he is tanking so bad, and the sad thing is, well, if you're conservative, it's not super conservative, it's not sad. He's raised more money than any of the candidates, yet he is tanking. He's now in 5th place, and if you look at the polls, they've steadily gone down for him. It's not up and down or anything. It is steadily decreasing.
And it really is the consequence of his brother's baggage, don't you think?
I do. I mean, I have to feel a little bad for the guy because everybody's thinking, well, George W. Bush turned out to be a little moderate, so we kind of like him, but we don't like him that much. His dad was, even more moderate. So Jeb Bush, who used to be more conservative in 2000, Jeb Bush, look how moderate he is. Gosh, he likes Common Core. He likes the Medicaid expansion. He's, pro-illegal immigrant. I mean, that's pretty much what's hurting him.
Well, and I got to think that with Rubio, I mean, his illegal immigration stand is going to hurt him badly. I just don't see how he can crack out. And I think probably the establishment has that figured out. Let's talk just briefly about where this thing hits. Let's assume that Trump doesn't take Florida. Rubio ends up doing it because Ted Cruz, pulls some votes away from the Trump crowd. I mean, there's a chance of a brokered convention, right? Can you tell our audience a little bit about what a brokered convention is. And I know this is kind of a little bit of a surprise for you. We didn't talk about this during the break, but I mean, this has been a subject that has been in the news pretty regularly over the last several days about the supposed establishment goal of displacing the people's interest by the mechanism which is known as the brokered convention.
Yeah, no problem. I have tried to keep up on it since it's been in the news. Basically, and I think I'm mostly correct here, my understanding of it is, when you vote for a candidate in the state, all the delegates are then supposed to go to the main convention, national convention, and some states require them to vote for the candidate that won that state. But as I understand it, half the states, a certain number of the states, do not require their delegates to vote for the candidate that won the state. So I guess those states could then switch their votes. And that's where the Republican establishment would come in if Trump won and say, look, you guys in these other states, you need to change your votes and, maybe vote for somebody else we bring in. It might not even be one of the candidates who's been running right now. They could even go back and say, hey, I want you all vote for John McCain. But as I understand it, the problem with a brokered convention is it's likely not going to happen because only a few states get to change their votes. It would obviously, anyone who changed their votes like that and disregarded the will of the voters, would they be given a lot of credibility? And I could go on, but I can hear the music.
Well, Rachel, I appreciate your insight. I mean, I guess theoretically we could even see Romney come back, even if you weren't a candidate at an early stage. I appreciate your insights, especially the story about, your interaction describing what happened with Romney in the airport on Saturday. I'm sure plenty of listeners are going to have interest in that. We'll get this podcast up for those of you who missed the first parts of this podcast, along with one of Rachel Alexander's articles. Appreciate you again coming on. Stay with us. The Joe Miller Show. We'll be right back.